So guys, I decided to deck myself out in celebration of the new Warriors coming out today, and the living vampire, the teen living vampire, B negative. And from what I've heard, he carries the aesthetic of the rock in the 90s, and he's a goth. And to celebrate, I've decked myself out in similar fashion to the goth style. So let's see how my fashion measures up to what is displayed on the pages of the new Warriors. Oh wait, I can't go to the comic shop to pick up the recent issue. Okay, so I'll just have to go onto the Marvel app and get the comic book myself. Let's get this digital comic, shall we? No, Kibblesmith. No. Honestly guys, I've been waiting for this last character of Daniel Kibblesmith's new Warriors because I had a little more hope for this one than the others. However, after digging into it a little bit more, I realized that like the other characters in this little band of warriors, this guy is just an exploitation of stereotypes and misappropriating derogatory titles.
B negative is the goth kid. When he was a baby, he got a rogue life-saving blood transfusion, we assume from Michael Morbius, and now he has a very similar look and very similar vampire powers. B negative also is obviously a pun. It's a blood type, which is great for a vampire character, and it's also a proud ownership of the idea of having a bad attitude.
Having said that, B negative doesn't sound like an internet derogatory term or an imaginary room where you can say whatever you want without anyone challenging your ideals, thoughts, and beliefs. He doesn't get his powers from grandpa's farts to get hooked into the Matrix, and he doesn't have an infinite resource of unreliable items at his disposal. So I would think that at some point he would be at least 50% better than his teammates. I mean, look at him. He's trying to keep his distance from others to keep from being associated with them. But no, he's part of the team. Why? Because that's the gig, just as much as he's part of the narrative tool and the writer's imagination of whatever oppressed minority he's thinking about. This time, it just happens to be the vampire powder with pink hair and Michael Jackson's courtroom wardrobe. B negative ages like a regular person, or does he? And he definitely drinks blood, or does he? But designer artist Luciano Vecchio took brilliant inspiration from the 90s Spider-Man cartoon and gave B negative the leech suckers that the animated version of Morbius had on his palms. First, let's talk about that element of the character that borrows from the Spider-Man animated series version of Morbius rather than the comic book Morbius. This version really irks me. Not that I didn't appreciate what the artist did for Michael Morbius in this, but that was a limitation due to censorship at the time. The animators and writers had to deviate from the source material, otherwise they wouldn't be able to incorporate the character into the series. Kibblesmith and Vecchio have a choice. There's no censorship or governing authority restricting their content. B negative has the leech suckers and vampire fangs. But his vampire fangs don't serve a purpose. It's a pussification of the vampire genre, and this choice doesn't make the character cool or edgy, it just makes the whole thing stupid. The vampires in the comics have sharp teeth to suck blood from their victims, like the movies, like the literature describing vampires. Just check out those late 19th century authors describing the creatures. So it's a horrible representation of what vampire powers are. It's also a misappropriation of the goth culture. The subculture is noted as springing from the music genres like Joy Division and The Cure. It derives from 19th century gothic literature and horror films of the same genre. It further grew in the 90s with other musical styles like post-punk and gothic rock. Those who identify with the subculture often dress in dark attire, often black, wear dark makeup, and sport black hair. Films with that influence are The Crow, The Matrix, Underworld, and Beetlejuice. The way B Negative is designed makes him seem more like a Hot Topic model attempting to redefine what goth should look like. A vampire without adhering to the Victorian style or sensibilities of those that idolize the style and aesthetic of the time period. Read Bram Stoker's Dracula, or John William Polidori's The Vampire. And, I know I'm going to screw this one up, Cyprien Berard's Lord Ruthven Ole's Vampires. This kid looks more like Jared Leto crossed with the lead singer for Paramore. So all of that is just a roundabout way of saying this kid's aesthetic is not goth. Punk? Maybe, but not goth. And this misappropriation of goth subculture will probably piss off a lot of goths. So let's take an inventory.
SAFESPACE is kind of a big, burly, sort of stereotypical jock.
No jock identifies with this character, and it feels like their hero name is a joke.
Snowflake is non-binary and goes by they, them.
Pisses off characters in the LGBT plus community.
Now I know what some of you were thinking. Catherine, you're a black transgender woman. This is the sort of character that you should love. I mean, after all, isn't this the representation that you're asking for? And you know what? No, we didn't ask for this. I don't think anyone did.
And they take offense to the character as some cruel joke.
And she inherited from her grandfather a magic backpack of divine origin.
Isn't enhanced with any power like her teammates, and her bag seems pretty useless in a pinch, but sounds like it'll serve up some laughs.
As a youth, he was exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas, and that has patched him permanently into the World Wide Web.
Seems more like a 90s Douglas Ramsey who writers at the time decided to kill off because he wasn't that appealing to stories filled with action and adventure. Plus, Grandpa's internet gas makes me laugh. And so goes the writing for B Negative, as it also sounds like a joke, assuming he got his life-saving transfusion from Michael Morbius. Ages like a regular person, or does he? And he definitely drinks blood, or does he? Just sounds like a stupid mystery box that no one is interested in opening. This kind of writing doesn't give anything definitive about the character. It just seems like a waste of opportunity to build on something solid. And any rule about foundations and what you're building upon applies to storytelling as well as it does to any kind of construction work. This kind of shiftiness in a narrative is bound to fall. So, a character I had more hope for may end up being the first to bite the dust when it comes to storytelling, but that's even if this title comes out at this point. Which brings us to this. For the past 4 videos in this series about the New Warriors, we talked about the release date for this new comic. Today, April 15th. They released the video for this new title in late March in a tone-deaf push for new comics in what was becoming the new and horrible landscape for businesses and how the entertainment industry was taking a hit. Productions were halted, workers sent home, printers and publishers shutting down, distributors debating about what they should do now that their retail shops are closing their doors. And that was only the beginning. Marvel continued to push for new titles. Children of the Atom, a new X-Men title featured gender-bent versions of the original team. A slew of other titles under the Dawn of X series, following the success of House of X and Powers of X. And this coming in yesterday from Comic Book Resources. CBR has learned that Marvel Comics will not release any new comic book digitally on April 15th. That's today. This follows previous weeks that the publisher has declined to release comics digitally, following Diamond Comics distributors halting the shipment of new comics due to the ongoing pandemic. Marvel Entertainment President Dan Buckley released a statement on April 1st, which I thought was a joke, but I guess it's serious, outlining the publisher's plan to not release any comic digitally. And I quote, "As you know, unfortunately, there will not be any new print titles available at your shops this week. Marvel will also not be releasing any new comic book titles digitally on April 1st. This is a fluid situation with details changing every day, so we appreciate your patience and understanding as we all navigate our way through this. As soon as more information is available, we will outline our longer-term plans and opportunities to support you and the industry. The article goes on with no physical comics being shipped or sold for the foreseeable future. Publishers have decided on an individual basis whether or not to release digital comics, with a majority of the bigger publishers, that's Marvel and DC, deciding to forego their release for the month of April. And so we have a situation where faithful comic book readers are watching the industry crumble. Distributors, publishers, creatives, all of us are in the same boat. Even if a new comic book title is crap and the story is garbage and the characters are shit, we can't purchase it. So it doesn't matter, physical or digital copies will get $0 in sales. And this is just wasted effort, even if it is a stupid half-assed effort on the part of Kibblesmith and Vecchio for this new Warriors title. After looking last night at Comixology, there are a litany of titles coming out next week, April 22nd. However, like this week's supposed new releases, there might be a sense of just kicking the can down the road, pushing the release dates of these titles even further down the calendar, because there is no end in sight for how long this thing will last. Just a week ago, officials extended the stay-at-home lockdown orders to mid-May. Long story short, this title wasn't appealing to anybody. The only folks who would buy it would just drop a bit of coin for the first issue out of morbid curiosity and for a quick laugh, but they'd drop it right after. It'd be a gem of how bad a comic book can be, like a terrible movie that never gets a sequel or a television series that never gets past pilot. But since the release date of this title is a big question mark at this point, we have to consider that Daniel Kibblesmith's new Warriors may never see the light of day. And maybe that's a good thing in the long run.